A matter of life or death. And this meeting is the most important gathering on climate change since the Paris Agreement was signed. It is hard to overstate the urgency of our situation. Even as we witness devastating climate impacts causing havoc across the world, we are still not doing enough, nor moving fast enough to prevent irreversible and catastrophic climate disruption. Nor are we doing enough to capitalize on the enormous social, economic, and then environmental opportunities of climate action. And so, I want to deliver 4 simple messages. First, science demands a significantly more ambitious response. Second, the Paris Agreement provides the framework for action, so we must operationalize it. Third, we have a collective responsibility to invest in averting global climate chaos, to consolidate the financial commitments made in Paris, and to assist the most vulnerable communities and nations. And fourth, climate action offers a compelling path to transform our world for the better.
Leaders from participating countries gave statements on behalf of their nations, outlining areas such as the adverse effects climate change has had in their country, their proposed plans for the future, and their continued pledges to tackle climate change.
Our presence here demonstrates that the political will to implement the proposals is there. Over the next several days, the negotiators from all over the world gathered here in Katowice will face a huge challenge. I want to assure you that Poland, the host of COP24, hopes very much for the success of us all, the success which will determine the future, the quality of life and perspectives for development for all countries around the globe.
On his part, President Muhammadu Buhari says Nigeria is on track to meet 20% of its emission reduction target.
In addition, Nigeria has specifically developed sectorial implementation plans in 5 priority areas. 1, oil and gas. 2, agriculture and land use. 3, transport. 4, industry. 5, energy and power. For each of the identified sectors, we have established key policies and measures that will lead to poverty reduction, job creation, gender and social inclusiveness, as well as the enhancement of a healthy environment. We recognize that financing could constitute a major constraint to national efforts aimed at addressing the negative impacts of climate change. In this regard, Nigeria reiterates that the principle of common but differentiated responsibility should constantly apply. We believe there should be clearly defined parameters for monitoring financial flows from developed countries to developing economies for climate change action. This should be underpinned by transparency and predictability. Similarly, we stress that a reliable mechanism must be created to augment sector contributions with funds from the private sector of countries whose economies are adding significant levels of greenhouse gases to the global atmosphere.
World-renowned naturalist and British broadcaster Sir David Attenborough also joined the meeting on Monday. He warned that the continuation of civilizations and of the natural world is in the hands of world leaders.
Right now, we're facing a man-made disaster of global scale. Our greatest threat in thousands of years, climate change.
He delivered a speech on behalf of the People's Seat, a role that is meant to represent the people around the world who are affected by climate change.
If we don't take action, the collapse of our civilizations and the extinction of much of the natural world is on the horizon.
what's good and what's not good for the planet.
We're too concerned as a society to be inconvenienced.
Continue to allow destruction of vitally important.
The people have spoken. Leaders of the world, you must lead. The continuation of our civilizations and the natural world upon which we depend is in your hands. Thank you.
Delegates at the talks said the biggest issues were likely to include finance and the level of scrutiny associated with monitoring individual nations' emissions. The United Nations has a goal to raise $100 billion every year from 2020 for climate action. To inject momentum, the World Bank Group on Monday said it will provide a further $200 billion over 5 years from the start of the next decade.
We are announcing $200 billion of climate finance, of which $100 billion comes from the public sector arms of the World Bank Group, IBRD and IDA. And what is very important is that half of this money would go for adaptation. We are, for the first time, putting adaptation and mitigation on equal footing. We face, as a global community, an inevitable task to be more resilient to climate change everywhere, but especially, as I said, in the poorest parts in the world. So let's do it. I see very little value of going back and searching for why something has not been done. I see a lot of value in getting it done.
The world is set to be on track for a 3 to 5 degrees Celsius rise in global average temperature this century. And if all known fossil fuel resources are used, the rise will be even bigger.